You want to know why you don't have any heels in the business? You don't have any heels because they can't take the booze. It's the same problem that every heel from the beginning of time has had. They can't take the booze. It takes courage. It takes discipline. You think it's an easy walk, the one that Colby Covington goes down by example? What he's willing to put up with 24/7, 365 to entertain you 3 times a year. I mean, have you ever thought of it from that perspective? Probably not. But it's tough, and there's a reason you don't have a lot of bad guys in sports. They can't take the booze. What am I talking about? Well, Daniel Cormier and Jon Jones, one of the great rivalries, truly. One of the great rivalries ever in combat sports. Top 3 in UFC history. But probably a top 5, and for sure a top 10, in all of combat sports history have decided apparently that they're going to make up. I don't know that I would ever root for somebody not to make up, or that I would root for somebody to go through life without being civil. But I got to tell you, I didn't want them to make up. I like that rivalry. There's not a whole lot you could do to Jon Jones. I mean, I'll insert myself. I don't like Jon Jones. What am I going to do about it? He is bigger than me. He is a better fighter than me. Some would say that he is equally as charming and maybe even more handsome than me. What am I going to do? I'm going to sit over here when he's not in the room, and I'm going to talk really tough into this microphone. I'm going to put it out to you guys. That's what I'm going to do. And when I see him to his face, I'm going to stare at the curb. How's that for honesty? Daniel doesn't necessarily have to do that. Daniel gave Jon one extremely hard contest. Daniel is a champion of a weight class that Jon is now pursuing a title in. Not for nothing, but if you're doing just a battle of arguments and resumes, Daniel stacks up pretty well next to Jon Jones. That's all I'll say. And they have decided now that they're going to make up. Jon Jones has said he has no problem with Daniel commentating his fight. And Daniel responded to the vein of something along the lines of, well, I didn't need your permission in the first place, but I will, of course, call your fight straight and right down the middle. And there was something about it where they were both him and Han, and it got a little cum-see, cum-soft, you know what I'm saying? I didn't enjoy it. I didn't really like the makeup. And there is so many great angles. There really is. There's so many great angles to go about a fight. And Jon's has been very interesting. When I tell you there's nothing, what am I going to do to Jon? Right? Obviously, I say that with belly hoop. Talk about he's stronger than me or he's better looking than me. Obviously, I'm saying this playfully. Of course, he is not. But you understand? Take this into consideration, okay? Jon Jones has been very open to tell the world he's going up to 200. I apologize. He's leaving 205 pounds and going up to heavyweight to make more money. He's been very open to tell the world, I think I can draw better at heavyweight. After he was inducted into the Hall of Fame, he did an interview. And within that interview, an hour or so before he was arrested, but really, just if you remember that night, he said, I'm going to need to do a better job of selling fights. That's how I'm going to be incentivized. That's the part of my contract that we've agreed upon and shaken hands on. So that's what I need to do a better job. I paid attention and I listened to that. Because why I can say what I want about Jon, I do find him interesting. And I do think he's very charming. And I do think he's charismatic. And I do think he's a handsome guy. And I do think people listen when he speaks. I mean, in all fairness, he checks a whole bunch of boxes that you need in a character that you're going to put on television. But he has the same problem that apparently Daniel has, which is a heel who can't take the booze. And since he's made that announcement that he's going to have to do more to draw, he was targeted for Francis. He was rumored to have sidestepped Stipe. He's found himself lockstep with a 1-1 out of his last 2 kickboxer named Surreal. And he missed the only opportunity he had to take a shot at the announcer, who happens to be one of his former biggest rivals. Do you want to know what was a really well-publicized press conference? And you guys can not only audit this, you can publicly audit it right now. You can just type this into YouTube, and you can put any press conference you want, but include the one between Jake Paul and Anderson Silva. Include that one, and you will see a number. How many people watched that? And you know who hosted that? Me. It's not because I was a great host. It's not because I had a fancy suit on. It's because I have heat with one of the participants, and people wanted to tune in to see what would happen. It's not the world's best storyline. Much better story, red corner versus blue corner. I'm just offering for you, from Jon's perspective, where he came out and told us, I'm going to be incentivized to sell the fight. We didn't get the fight we anticipated that we waited 3 years for. We didn't get the next fight that we thought would happen. We ended up, and now we want to make nice with the announcer. I think that Daniel handled it right. I may not like it. I think that Daniel handled it right. I think that when you're in the suit, when you're holding the microphone, when you're on that side of the desk, there is a way that you must behave that is different. Jon would have free reign, but Daniel wouldn't. I don't really care if those two want to manufacture conflict or if they want to manufacture that they've made up. I don't really care. What bothers me is why. There's obviously no sincerity in it. Neither one of them nothing has changed between these two. One guy knocked another man out by kicking him in the head while he was juiced up on steroids. Like, you're not going to get over that one day. But the fighter is so worried that in less than a month, that a commentator might say something shrewd about him, that he would like to get in front of it to make sure that that never gets said. And that surprises me. I mean, I will tell you, in the tough guy business, the things that make these tough guys squirm, the things that the tough guys, the baddest dudes that you could think of, things that make them uneasy, the lack of sincerity that they will have when they issue a statement because they can't stand to hear the boos, surprises me. It never goes away. Jon told us all, 90 minutes before he was placed in handcuffs, he told us all that he was going to have to sell this fight more than usual. Now, of course, that was Francis on to Stipe, and now we're down to a kickboxer that's 1-1 in his last two. But at the time, he did tell us that. He did a great job with the Jon Jones experiment, which is bringing us along the journey of the weight gain. And easily the most interesting thing that has happened, which is hard to do, right? I mean, when you do a press release on the side of a billboard that you then pretend was on accident, that's a pretty good spoof. That's a pretty good spoof. He comes out and he wants to make up with the announcer, and he tells us all, I'm not going to tell you what I weigh until we get to the weigh-in. I got to tell you, that had me really interested. The entire Jon Jones experiment of take 3 years off, get kicked out of a camp, go into a new weight class like that, that's hard for a human being to do. But Jon's been doing things his whole life that other human beings can't do. Refusing to tell us, or Surreal, or anybody, what he weighs, and tell the weigh-in was great. It was great. And I'll also remind you, the highest drawing, at least at the time, now this is an old stat, but at the time, the highest drawing WrestleMania of all time was Hulk Hogan versus Vince McMahon. There are few things in sport that work better than promoter versus athlete. The number one thing that was getting my friend Tyrone Woodley over when he was champion was the heat that he was having with Dana White. I mean, it made those press conferences very fun. Ariel versus Dana made them very fun. And while fighter versus promoter, it's not quite the same thing as fighter versus announcer. We'll take it. It's something. There's some kind of heat. The guy's been gone for 3 years. They're about to put him in a world title fight against a guy that's 1-1 in his last two. The hardest thing I ever have to do when I'm discussing Surreal Gone is arguing with John Anik that his last name is pronounced Gone instead of Gong or Gang or Gan or anything like that. And the one little piece that we could have found interesting, the little bit of back and forth between the announcer and the fighter. They insincerely, because neither of them, they insincerely squashed it 3 weeks before bell time. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the story of Jon Jones being unpleased with his paycheck.